Lieutenant Boimler keeps forgetting Sleepy Merp's name. Dr. Ta'ana has taken an oath not to eat her patients. And Dr. Miglimo's soup doesn't even taste like it's been in his mother's mouth. Hello, everybody, and welcome to The Seventh Rule with Cirroc Lofton.
Hello, hello.
My name is Ryan T. Husk, and today we're doing a review of Star Trek Lower Decks, episode 5 of season 4. That is Empathological Fallacies, written by Jamie Loftus. That's Cirroc Lofton's AKA. Directed by Meg Lloyd. And what a coincidence. We have a very special guest today. It is director Meg Lloyd. Thank you so much for joining us today.
I am so pleased to be here. Thank you so much for inviting me.
So,
Great to have you.
First things first, everybody's wondering, because we were talking a little bit before we hit record, you are a Star Trek fan. Can you tell us all what your favorite Star Trek series is, excluding Lower Decks?
Okay. See, now that's just mean. That's rude, actually. I would have to say TNG is my favorite series overall, but Janeway is my favorite captain.
Yeah,
that was hard.
That's believable.
You should have seen all the calculations like running in my brain just now, ranking absolutely everything.
Yeah.
So would a dream scenario for you be Janeway as the captain on Next Generation?
Oh, no.
Would that...
Well, okay, so the great thing about Star Trek is
It does sound a little
there's
weird.
so much Star Trek that you can find
Yeah.
something you love about each
Yeah.
of the different series.
It is true. It's true. And we're finding things that we love about your series watching it, because the comedy aspect is something that I'm loving watching this Lower Deck show. It's really a masterpiece when it comes to comedy. There's so many little things that you insert that I love watching. The big one for me in this episode is the giant margarita glasses, or whatever, the drink glasses that you get when you're at like Senior Frogs or you're somewhere at Vegas, you know? So I love these. I love the humor in this show. Tell us about experience working on it.
Yeah, so those glasses in the script I think are called yard longs. And as we were having our launch, we all called them different things. So some people called them yard glasses. I called them whale bones. They may actually be called, you know what? They are called whale bones in the script, because somebody's like, so do we draw them like a huge rib? And it was funny to realize that we all thought that might have been a different thing. But yeah, Jamie wrote a really solid script. And a lot of the verbal jokes are like they're ready and waiting for us when we dive in. But the really fun thing about this show, since it's animated, is the great opportunity for like background and visual comedy. So one of the big challenges on this episode in particular were the huge scenes of crowds, just so many crowds and so many characters all the time.
Yeah.
And board artist Spencer Johnson had most of the crowd scenes in the bar. So you can thank him for a lot of the really funny stuff you're seeing happen as, you know, set dressing to the foreground drama of this show. He had, I want to say, his most full shot, he was tracking like the acting of 30 people at once. It's a huge challenge.
What was impressive about that, especially, wasn't just the number of people that were in them, but that they were each doing very different things and showing very different emotions. Some were laughing, some were fighting, some were crying, some were making out. And that just felt like such a deliberate choice to really, you know, kind of flex a little bit and say, look, we don't have to just have, you know, 30 people all laughing or 30 people all fighting. We can do all these different things. It's probably a lot of work for the storyboard artist you just mentioned, but
Spencer,
but it's very rewarding because it gave us all something to look at and enjoy.
So both like the huge amount that Spencer gave us to begin with, and then going back in to do, I think when you talked with Brandon, he talked about doing like revisions and retakes on different versions. So we did even add more people in on retakes. And my assistant director for this episode, Belle O, she added in Livik and Gary from episode 2 having like a slap fight in the background of one of the scenes, because it was, I think it was Miglimo with the replicator, that we
Mm-hmm.
had great acting with Miglimo on the replicator. And as we're getting further along and we're, deep into revisions and retakes, we realize there's nobody behind him. It looks like he's alone in this big space. And with the soundscape, we could, say that everyone was just on the other side of the camera, but it was like, you know what? We need to put someone back there. So it was fun to bring back, even though their voice actors weren't returning, a like visual cameo of the two new ensigns we met in our previous episode. I have no bones, yet I must flee.
Yeah. Wow. Yeah, and the other scene that kind of jumps out at me too, that kind of provided the same kind of sensation of a lot of visuals happening at the same time, was when there were a bunch of characters and they were all in that giant room, kind of half naked, dancing on the floor or something like that.
Yeah. Yeah. Oh, the pyramid.
Yep.
So after we
Yeah.
draw all of this, someone has to go through our production team has to go through the entire episode, label every background character, label what state they're in of undressed, whether they've got full uniform, half buttoned uniform, underwear. And that has to be tracked and consistent through the whole episode. So if you watch, even as we see crew members on other parts of the ship, you're never going to see somebody repeating on the other side of the ship, because our prod team put so much effort into making sure that we maintained continuity throughout. And you mentioned like all the different emotions that we have. That was something we worked really hard, because you know what? We've all seen The Naked Now, and we've seen,
Yeah.
we've even seen the Lower Decks version of The Naked Now back in season 3, episode 8, I think. So we couldn't just make it a sex party. We really had to bring up all different kinds of emotions, because that's what, spoilers for the episode, T'Lyn is causing to happen on the ship. And there's one shot in particular I love that you really don't catch until your second viewing. When T'Lyn first enters the bar, you'll see as she passes on screen that people don't start to overreact on their emotions until T'Lyn walks by them.
Oh,
And it's
very
subtle
cool.
enough that you may think that it's the Betazoid still tipping it off. But everyone, go watch the episode again and look specifically
Yeah.
for that shot.
That's very cool. That's one of those things, yeah, where you notice it only the second time once you actually know what's going on. And you mentioned continuity, and I'd love to discuss a little bit of continuity, because you've been with Lower Decks, as far as I know, since season 2. You were the storyboard and a storyboard artist season 2 and season 3, and like Brandon Williams, the aforementioned, you are now a director, and you took that path. Now, in season 2 and season 3, you did episodes 2, 5, and 8. You're doing that again in season 4. We know that Brandon is team 3, 6, and 9. Do you and your team, and so even when you moved on to director, you stayed with team 2, 5, and 8. Do you all just like stick together outside of work too? Or is it like is there like a rivalry, or do you wear like team colors, or do you have chants?
There's no rivalry. We do each have our own team group chats, but we do also have like a ship-wide chat, if you will. And now that we're returning back to office, we have what's called our away team wall. So if you're in the office that day, everyone's drawn a post-it note with like their self-portrait on it. So if you're in the office that day, you move your post-it note under bridge team. So when you walk in, you can glance and like see which of your friends are in today. And then as you leave, you move your post-it note back under away team, and you're considered on an away team until you make it back into the office.
So cool.
I'm curious about the amount of workload that it takes to produce these kinds of episodes, and if that workload allows for you to do other projects at the same time, and if so, how does that structure?
So I'm vain enough to think I can do other projects at the same time. But every time I go for it, I end up getting burnt out. So when I started on seasons 2 and 3, this is when the COVID pandemic, primarily work from home, had started. So this is actually the first season I've been to the office at all. And while Lower Decks is a lot of work, because we're split up into our teams and because the schedule works the way that it does, a board artist may only spend 18 to 24 weeks on the show, period. which leaves the rest of the year to, pick up other projects and find other shorter seasons to jump a hold on. One of the reasons why Brandon and I have been so fortunate as to move up to director, I feel so quickly, is that it's very hard to make sure that the entire team can come back every single season, because different projects at different studios have such different schedules. So we really, really lucked out in season 4 that 2 of our directors ended up not returning, going on to other projects, and both Brandon and I had expressed interest before, and I went through an interview, I went through everything, and I'm really happy to have a first-time director on the season with me as well, because there'll be times like after a meeting where he and I will message each other and be like, this was normal, right? Like we did a good job. This was how it's supposed to go. Okay, great.
Yeah. So because of that, you're able to dedicate your energy solely to doing Lower Decks, because they have also given you the director responsibility. Is that what I'm understanding?
Yes. And directors do have a much longer run on each season than the board artists do. So a board artist is on each episode for about 6 weeks, and the director's on the episode with them. We do like several check-ins, and we give rounds of notes as they're working on their boards. But then we have the episode for about another 18 weeks after that, editing together the clean version of the board. Let's see if I can remember all the steps. So the board artists have it for 2 weeks to just rough out their idea of what they're thinking. They have a check-in with their director. I sort of say, amazing job on this, and can I get a little more over here? And then they have 4 weeks to do a cleaned up, turned around pass of the episode. And then we edit that together for a clean cut that then goes to our showrunner. So our supervising director sees the boards earlier when they're just like a slideshow that you flip through. We don't show them to our showrunner until they have the first pass of music and sound. He gives us feedback on that, and then we put together another version of the episode with retakes, reshoots, and we'll send that off to network and our showrunner. We get another round of notes, a few more weeks of retakes and reshoots. We send it off to network again, and then we have one last round of notes to work through until we have the locked off version that we give to production, that they will now split out, label all the characters, label all the sets, and they'll get that ready to move on to the next step in production, which is our design teams, our layout teams, and our animation teams.
Wow.
Yeah, it's a very lengthy process when you really break it down like that. It seems like it's there's a lot of hands in the pie making this dish. But I wanted to ask you, you mentioned revisions. So those revisions are both artistic and dialogue as well. I mean, do you have voice actors come and re-record things or add things?
Yeah, so as the director, I don't rewrite, I don't touch the scripts. That's the screenwriter's job. There are occasions where I can, pitch, oh, what if a joke here was like that? But the final call goes to our showrunner, Mike. And so if they watch the episode through and decide a scene needs something a little extra, then either Mike or the person who wrote the episode will go in and do a dialogue rewrite of that scene. But there are a lot of visual retakes and reshoots, whether that's adding someone else into the background, or we'll be asked a lot to change the demeanor. And sometimes when we get the actual voice acting from the actors, because we don't always have the final voices before we start, we have something that's called a scratch track, which is typically our dialogue editor, Ray. He will record the entire episode himself, voices and all, and that's what the board artists will have as reference for their first acting pass. But of course, Tawny, Jack, all of our actors.
Yeah, does he try to do it in their voices?
Dr.
Yeah,
Ta'ana.
Does he try to do it in their voices? Yeah. I want to hear him do Shaq's. I'd love to hear his impersonation. Yeah.
I hear his Rutherford in my dreams sometimes. It doesn't sound like Eugene's voice, but it's so specifically that's what Ray sounds like doing Rutherford. And there are times where especially when we have a guest actor, that the difference in the voices will be, very jarring. So in this episode, he did, Dequeue. He did Dequeue with a Southern accent. And this was before we cast our guest actress who would come in. So sometimes it's
who was very
funny.
good, by the way. Very good.
they are outstanding. And it's always
Mhm.
so fun to like see the big names and the awesome names that we get on our, show,
Yeah.
being a Star Trek series. Um, and it's very funny to like hear the first edit with the actors putting their spin on it. Because a lot of times we will change the acting of the animation in order to match what the voice actors presented.
Mhm.
Um, Typically when you're a dubbing voice actor,
What did
um,
those changes look like though? So let's say I come in there and I'm the voice actor and I do it in a Southern accent, for example, or something.
mhm.
How would you manipulate and change those things?
So the accent itself wouldn't change the performance, but maybe if the original line is, "Oh, darling, what's wrong?" And then the voice actor comes in, "Darling, what's wrong?" Like you can hear the body language in the voice delivery. And
Okay.
so, that would be like a simple pose. But there are
Yeah.
instances where, listen, this is a T'Lyn heavy episode, and
Yeah.
Gabrielle does a fantastic T'Lyn, and we're always asked to do less physical acting on T'Lyn. Take out smiles, take out, any sort of gestures, and it's sometimes difficult to remember, like, okay, how do you deliver a very emotional performance from a character who's, perfectly emotionless, because that's the joke. Um, I think
Yeah.
there's one shot with T'Lyn in this episode that I love so much, and it's where when she and Mariner are in kind of that little utility closet, and we're looking at her hands, and her hands are balled up in fists on her leg,
Hmm.
and her facial expression doesn't change, but when she sort of comes to her emotional breakthrough, she just unclenches her hands. So we had to find kind of a different emotional way to portray that. But you asked about rewrites, and I think you'd be interested to know that after I was done with the episode, all those different versions, and it was out of my hands, there was a little extra written into the episode even after I'd left it. So that was something that our supervising director would board in, and it's the moment where T'Lyn calms Mariner down. And
Mhm.
Mariner's like, "Are you mind melding me?" And T'Lyn's like, "No," and she evens her out. That was something that wasn't originally in our episode, but because we have so many checkpoints of, is the episode working, is the story reading, that we can add in final changes up until under the wire.
Wow.
Wow.
Oh, that's really cool, Meg.
Yeah.
So,
Yeah.
this was something that I noticed pretty quickly in this episode, which was that it felt to me like a very 90s Star Trek episode, especially specifically felt like a Next Generation episode in which you could almost say, like, nothing of grand scale happens. They don't run into an alien
Mhm.
race and have like a war. They don't go on a planet and save a dying village. It's all kind of internal. It's an anomaly. It's a some guests that are on, and like a Luoxana Troy episode or
Mhm.
something like that, right? For example.
Mhm.
And I wanted to know, was it discussed that this one was going to have kind of a Next Generation feel or a 90s Trek feel, or is it kind of just understood?
I am so glad that you've spotted this, because Mike McMahon, our showrunner, specifically said this is Data's Day. This is the
Very
episode
good.
Data's Day from T'Lyn's point of view. And it's a typical day on the ship where we're not having, like you're saying, a huge external battle. We're following a character journey all the way through. There's a production reason to have a lower stakes episode like this as well, because so often in our episodes we're going to completely new places, and having these much bigger episodes, that once or twice a season we do try and have an episode that's primarily set on the ship in order to lift the workload on our background teams. Um, because
Mhm.
I mean, you guys have seen leading up to this, we've had some amazing location episodes already this season with, Cradle of
Yeah.
Exelon and the
Mhm.
Menagerie and Voyager. So, like, even though Voyager exists in real life, and you got this when you were interviewing Amanda during that episode, we had to make our version of Voyager. And so all of that had to be completely remade from scratch, and drawn in the style of the show. So even though this episode is a huge progress for one of our characters and a huge story for one of our characters, it was thankfully able to really limit the amount of new locations we had to provide, since it takes place on the Cerritos.
Wow.
Yeah, and like I said, to your whole crew and with Jamie Loftus also, shout out to Jamie for really putting in the work on this script as well. There's so many moments. I love the troll, it's Romulan ale o'clock somewhere,
Oh my gosh, I
Uh,
have to run and get something. Please wait. I can't believe I forgot
uh,
to grab it before it
No
started.
problem.
Talk amongst yourselves.
Okay,
yeah,
Cirroc, then I wanted to point out to you, did
yeah.
you notice, because we literally just watched this Next Generation episode, when they were running by, did you notice the two people in Anbo Jitsu armor? The thing where
Yes.
Riker and his dad were
Okay,
battling it
so
out?
the
We
day
just
that
did
I
that
read the
episode.
script,
We just did it, yeah.
I went to one of those websites that lets you order a hat,
Oh, there
and I
it
ordered a hat that
is.
said it's Romulan ale o'clock somewhere.
That is it. That's
Now,
great.
it's not in the right colors that it ended up being in the show because our first passive designs are always in black and white. But I was like, I have to be the first person in the world who owns this hat. So I bought this hat about a year ago because that's when we were primarily working on this episode.
Oh wow! So you've been waiting to
Wow.
bust that out for a minute.
I've been waiting.
Nobody gets the joke until
Yeah.
now.
I think I wore it to a couple work meetings and then a couple work Zooms, and then I'm like, no, I don't need to wear a hat. I live inside. But yeah, so
No, definitely love that. I love the charades. Them playing the game of charades
mhm.
with what did you say? Comfortable Odo from DS.
Yeah. That was actually so most of the security team was storyboarded by Gene, who's that was storyboarded by Gene. But the charades itself ended up getting a retake because originally Kayshawn picks up the bucket, and I was like, charade rules. You cannot physically use props during charades. He can point at it, but he can't pick it up. So
Right.
the acting in that scene is really fun because he has to be trying to pretend to be Constable Odo, but he has to reasonably be doing what Shax is guessing. So like a bird, you're shrinking, someone who shrinks. And so we had to reverse engineer what Kayshawn's acting would be from both Shax's guessing and what would end up being the final answer.
Yeah, and while we have you too, I have another question because this thing made me laugh too. Speaking of Kayshawn, when the moment came down and it was like red alert, and Kayshawn runs to get his gun or whatever, the way he runs, who decided to make him run like that? Because I know people that run like that, and it was so funny to actually see it animated.
So you found the Easter egg, which is the one Naruto run that I have allowed in this season because listen, everyone who works in animation is a little bit of an anime fan. And that was Jean, that was the board artist for that sequence. And she was like, I really want him to Naruto run just for this shot, just for this scene. And it's happened in other seasons where we've had to be like, listen, personally, I don't think he's running fast enough to justify that because the reason why you run like that in Naruto is the ninjas are going so fast that it's the most aerodynamically reasonable way possible to move. But it also looks cool to run like a ninja with your hands behind you. So I allowed it for that.
He's just running to the cabinet. It's like right over there.
But he's got to get there so fast. So yeah, I guess look for that once each season because that's all that we'll let in. And we're also like, okay, do you know what? I don't think we've seen a Temerian run in an emergency before. That could reasonably be how they move.
That could be, but I definitely took note of it. I thought,
I'm so glad you saw it.
I was like, why is he running like that? Oh my god, that had me rolling. Actually, I felt like this was like a cruise ship episode. It felt like I was on the cruise because this is almost the demeanor that everybody has when they're on the cruise. They're just drinking a drink and kind of walking around, and so I felt
Partying,
like,
making human
so I was
pyramids.
like,
Mhm.
did they go on the cruise and just like write this based off of their experience having drinks and walking around in cosplay? But I can see it was a lot more detail even than that put into this. And also I want to again highlight how great the guest actors were, the voice actors who did the Betazoid characters, because I thought
Mhm.
they really brought like going back to what Ryan was talking about, the 90s feel. I felt like
Yeah.
their voice acting gave me like Golden Girls vibes or something to that effect.
Yep.
So
This was
def
the
yeah.
Yeah, this was pitched to us as this is the Betazoids Golden Girls episode. Um
Gotta love that.
and
Oh yeah.
I want to see cosplayer groups of these three. That would be so much fun. It's the fans of our show are so good at what they do. Um I have to shout this out. I know we're talking about episode 5, but in episode 2, when we find out what the Tucker tubes are actually called, and then we get that third, the Billups tube. While we were working on episode 2, somebody, and I can't remember which con it was, but somebody made a working prop of that and brought it with their cosplay to some sort of Star Trek convention. And we were all like quietly freaking out, like, do you think they'll make the Billups tube some? Do you think they'll add a third tube someday because of our episode? It would just be
Wow.
yeah, I love seeing the people making plushies of the characters, costumes, fan art. It's great to have like this online community that so enjoys our show, and to have so
Yeah.
many people who are already like working on our show as fans already.
I'm working on my slam poetry for when I
Oh
get called to
no.
the microphone.
Oh no.
Worf, Worf, Worf. Torn between worlds, a warrior, no, a farm boy.
Yes. Yes.
I'm better at
Oh
glam
wow.
poetry myself, but that's just my thing, maybe. Hey, Meg, this has been so cool, and we really appreciate you jumping on with us. We're loving the episodes. We're halfway through this 4th season.
Wow.
Can you believe we're already halfway through the
Can you
4th
believe?
season? We're already talking about season 5. This little brand new show is not, it's barely a toddler anymore. This show is flying
It's
by,
in
but
preschool.
you guys are killing it.
And you guys have been doing a great job also building this overarching curiosity into this mysterious ship, which is what the Betazoids left behind on their way out. Just that little bit of a kind of Easter egg, and that is another thing I'm looking forward to. So I love the way you're making the episodes funny. You're also making them have individual personality, but also carrying out an overall season arc for this season. So kudos to your team, to everybody
Yeah.
doing it. Like I said, I just get so many laughs watching this.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
We're gonna be sorry, go ahead.
Oh, I just want to say, as we're winding down, I have to shout out Nick Smith, Marcy Bones, and Mike Mullen, who also provided storyboards for this episode. Even though we didn't specifically talk about their scenes, it takes so many people to generate the drawings that eventually go on to even more people to go through design.
Aw. We were getting such a good shout out there.
Yeah.
Well, we're definitely going to be talking about those episodes, or
Positors
those
dailies, or like what the animators are working on. Because
Meg,
I'm just so
sorry,
interested in like the level.
We lost you for a second there, Meg. Can you start that over for us, please?
I can definitely do that.
Thanks.
But I will listen in to meetings of departments that I'm not necessarily a part of, you know, with my camera off and my microphone off, because it's so great to sit in even a virtual room with all the different skill sets and passionate people that make the show happen. That there's so much that goes into making this show. It takes hundreds of people over a year to do just one episode. We just have to layer them all on top of each other. So it's hundreds of us working on 10 episodes at a time, all the time, until it's finished.
You were also giving some shout out to some artists that you didn't get a chance to highlight. Mike Mullen, I think. Who were the names?
So Mike Mullen was actually my director in season 3, and he ended up jumping in to storyboard a couple of scenes in this episode, just because we needed a couple extra hands on deck. And then Marcy Bones as well. Marcy did the scene of T'Lyn in her quarters, and then Boimler and Rutherford in their quarters together. And then Nick Smith did a ton of the great scenes between Mariner and T'Lyn. And I believe he mostly did the scenes of them talking in that utility corridor together, which ended up so sweet and such like a wonderful heart of the episode. So my team, listen, don't tell Brandon, I think my team's the best. So
coincidentally, he said the same about his team.
He's biased, but I'll give it to him. They did
Well, the beautiful thing is that from a viewer standpoint, the consistency level is there between the different shows. Whoever's directing it, we just see the quality output, and I'm sure that Mike McMahon is a large part of the reason that there has that consistency there.
Yeah.
But we definitely love the work you guys are putting out. It's like I said, it's making us laugh. It's trolling Star Trek in the funniest
Yes.
of ways, and that's what we love about it.
Yeah. And yeah, and also all of the writing consistency and character consistency, that is McMahon all the way. But a lot of the visual consistency is due to Barry, who you guys spoke to for episode 1. Because while I just have the 3 episodes that I direct in my season, he really keeps the visual voice consistent across like all of the episodes and all of the departments.
We definitely notice it. It's an amazing product.
Yeah.
And we will be covering more of those scenes that you mentioned a little bit ago. We're going to be covering all those, tons of Easter eggs too. It feels like it's almost like every other episode has like an Easter egg dump. And then like the next one is like practically no Easter eggs or references. And then the one after that is just like, here's a whole bunch. We'll see if we caught them all. We'll talk about all that stuff. Everybody stick around. Meg, this has been amazing. Thank you so much. We hope to see you again real soon. Everybody stick around. We'll be right back on The 7th Rule. Hi, everybody. Welcome back to The 7th Rule of Cirroc Lofton.
Yeah, hello.
We've got a pretty awesome episode here that we're working with right now. Show them what you're working with. Here are the trivioids of the week. They are: the USS Cerritos is providing transport to 3 Betazoid diplomats. 3 glorified socialites just spent 3 weeks attending parties on Angel 1. Do you remember Angel 1?
No. What was Angel 1?
Darren Doctorman calls Angeloni. That will never not be funny. And Angel 1, I'll tell you in a moment. T'Lyn wants her punishment to conclude so she can return to the Cheval. Lieutenant Boimler keeps forgetting Sleepy Merp's name. Dr. Migley Mo's soup doesn't even taste like it's been in his mother's mouth. Ensign Barnes wants to drop the ship out of warp. Dr. Ta'ana has taken an oath not to eat her patients. T'Lyn is only 62 years of age, and every tarot card is a rebirth. Okay, Angel 1. Let me show you. You'll remember with one picture. It's a Next Generation season 1 episode, and people that know the episode well will probably know the episode I'm talking, or the picture I'm talking about. But it is this one with Riker's nipple out in the air.
Is that Angel 1?
Yeah, you remember this one? And it had our good buddy here.
Oh yeah, that was the planet.
Yeah, Leonard Crowfoot.
Yes.
That was a fun one.
That's Angel 1.
So that's where the Betazoids were. So look, Cirroc, let's just start it off this way. Did you enjoy this episode?
Yeah, I enjoyed the episode. I thought it was funny. It made me laugh in a few spots.
There are a few things. There are a few Easter eggs. One was a Next Generation episode called The Game. I believe they had The Game. Where what was it? Anyway, people that know Next Generation well know the game. We will review that when it comes up. It is a pretty big Wesley Crusher episode, so it's coming up fairly soon. It was Etana Joel, I believe, that gave it to Riker in that episode, and Big Merp is playing it or using it. Actually, I did take a picture of it. Check this out.
Big Merp.
Yeah. Is that like Big Perm practically backwards? What's up, Big Perm? I mean, Big Worm. Remember that?
Yeah, Big Worm. Yeah.
But then Smokey called him Big Perm at first. Here it is. Here is Big Merp playing the game. It's kind of like a video game where, you watch it with your eyes in it. It's kind of like some interesting hologram thing. And then also, here was the Anbo Jitsu guys.
Yeah.
Which was brilliant.
That's what's his name in the background, right?
Yeah, Billups, I think. Is that Billups?
Billups, yeah. Yeah.
First name, Chauncey.
We just saw the Anbo Jitsu too.
Just saw it. That was perfect timing.
Perfect time.
Okay, so also the tarot cards, 3 of them. I don't know if you had to pause it to really catch it. Did you pause it on the tarot cards? If you did not, I'll tell you there were 5 cards flipped up. With lower decks, I'm always like, I can't take anything for granted. I just have to assume that they're going to try to sneak something in. I'm sure I keep missing things. The 5 cards were Invasion, Derna. I recognize Derna. I'll have to look that up. But the next 3 were Orbs, like Orbs of the Prophets. Celestial Temple was 1, and the Emissary was 1. So that was pretty awesome.
So they're Bajoran tarot cards.
Must be.
Yeah.
Let me see.
I didn't catch that. I saw them, but I didn't really look at the detail on them. And that's the thing. It's like there's so many things happening in this show, and you literally have to almost, freeze frame it every once in a while just to soak up the kind of Easter eggs that they're putting out there.
Okay. So Derna, looking it up, it is the 4th moon of Bajor. And it was featured in an episode of Deep Space Nine, Image in the Sand, as well as Shadows and Symbols. Those were at the very beginning of season 7, if I remember correctly. So that's cool. Yeah. There were so many fun little nods there. Was there another one?
Odo got one with the charades. So another DS9 reference right there.
And Worf. The other non-appearance mentions were Captain Sokol, because he was in a previous episode with I believe it was probably Wedge Dudge when they featured T'Lyn and her previous ship in season 2, I think it was. And Spock and his dad, Sarek, because they said Spock's dad. So that's a double nam because it's Spock and his dad, Sarek. And Malcolm Reed, the Malcolm Reed puzzle, that is played, Malcolm Reed is played by Dominic Keating. So shout out to our good friend Dom for getting a little love on Lower Decks.
Yeah. Shout out to Dom. You were also saying, what were you just saying about the other cameos? It was Malcolm Reed and the one just before that. What were you saying?
Spock and Sarek. Spock and his dad.
Just before that.
Worf. They mentioned Worf. With the slam poetry.
Yes.
With the are you a big slam poetry guy, Cirroc?
I would get into it. It seemed like it looked fun. It looked fun. Spock and Sarek got the shout out. I saw that Malcolm Reed got one. I mean, like I said, the things that had me laughing were T'Lyn.
Yeah.
T'Lyn her humor is really it's funny, especially when she's like, she has a line. She says, "No calms, but alcohol and merriment," or something to that effect. Had me rolling. It's just like that's kind of like something I would say. Like, seriously, you don't have electricity, but you got got beer, and so it was a funny lines.
Yeah, Tallinn is such a great addition. We keep saying that, we keep talking about it, but it's not just Gabrielle Ruiz and how well she delivers it. I believe that's who it is. But she's well written. Meg Lloyd just gave us a little insight on how they portray her, because I was intently watching her in her kind of heart-to-heart moment with Mariner, and I was trying to see if she would crack a little smile, because in a previous episode, Amanda Wong tweeted out, our good friend Amanda Wong, she did a screenshot where she's sharing a moment to Lynn and I think maybe Boimler, and she has just the tiniest little crack of a smile on one side of her face, just a little uptick that you only notice on a freeze frame. So I was watching intently for that in this episode. There was no such thing in this episode, but as Meg just explained, they did it with the hands, which is so smart, I thought.
Yeah, her, and we know people like this that are kind of like really emotionally kind of flat, and they don't really give you a whole bunch. They're
like Dominic Keating. No, I'm just kidding.
Yeah, right. But we know people. So Tallinn reminds me of somebody that I know, somebody who has this kind of really almost pessimistic view of the world, not really overly enthusiastic about anything. So that resonates with me. The other thing that I like is the Shax and Ta'ana jokes that they had in this episode. I thought were also funny. I loved how Ta'ana wrapped around his hand, how a cat kind of wraps around your hand when it gets all crazy.
And how she's scratching under the door. That's their favorite game in the world, is to get their paws under the door. Especially if you're in the bathroom. They're like, hey, what's under this door? But they really love to play those cat games with Ta'ana, like when she was hopping in the box in a previous season, That was really smart. Really good stuff there. Oh, Xanthi fever, Cirroc. What they thought that the Betazoids had, Xanthi fever, which was funny because the Betazoids were all offended. They're like, we are way too young to have Xanthi fever. Thank you very much. That was in the Deep Space Nine episode with Lwaxana Troi, Major Roddenberry, of course, where everybody started falling in love with each other and getting angry and haughty and all that. And you were in love with Kira, and that never fully faded, I think.
That wasn't Xanthi fever, though. But yes, I know what you mean.
You're just like, everybody's acting weird. I got an excuse now to.
Exactly. I was like, this is my perfect timing to express my love for Kira. I can blame it on the Xanthi.
Whoa, dropping bars here. That was good.
Yeah. So no, I did recognize that, and I did. That was the thing about those three Betazoids, because they made those references like, what are you calling us, old? Like that's like they made it equivalent to like menopause or something, right? The Xanthi thing. So they were acting like we're way too young for that. That's not something we could get, right? And which was actually proved to be the case. The other thing I thought was interesting was that they made this whole the BIA instead of the CIA, the Betazoid Intelligence Agency. I thought that was just made me laugh. I love the reference to the carpet. Oh, perfect pass out carpet. Like I said, things that you would say in Vegas, things that you would say on a cruise. These are kinds of, that's why I got that vibe when I was watching this episode. So yeah, it made me feel,
when you said that, it felt like we were playing Family Feud. You're like, name something you hear on the cruise at 2 a.m. Ding, number 2 answer.
Exactly.
One other thing, when you were talking about Betazoids, kind of like a menopause, like an older thing, They did mention Cirroc's Bendai syndrome. The Bendai syndrome was in the episode Next Generation episode. I believe it's called Cirroc, that we'll be covering on the Seventh Rule in the coming months. And it was Spock's father, Cirroc, getting older and having this syndrome in which he couldn't control his emotions. And it was a really good episode. Beautiful performances by who's the actor that plays Cirroc? I can't remember off the top of my head, but also Captain Picard, Patrick Stewart, Beverly Crusher did very well. Let me look him up just to be sure, so I don't want to misspeak. Mark Lenard, who also played in the original series as well. This guy's all over the place. He was kind of like a Jeff Combs before Jeff Combs was Mark Lenard.
So Mark Lenard played Leonard Nimoy's dad.
Yeah,
they both had a Leonard in it.
Yeah, and
that's interesting.
Spock was always tussling with Leonard McCoy. So maybe that's
Leonard's everywhere.
They're everywhere you look.
How many Leonards on this ship? Oh, that's funny. That reminds me of when Meg was saying, no, there's a Megan and there's another Megan, and so I go by Meg. And so yeah, it's like, how many Megs are here? How many Leonards are here? Miggly Mo and the Repliman. I put Miggly Mo versus the Repliman.
Versus
another bit of comedy. I really like the way it when Miggly Mo snaps out of it and kind of realizes that he's been acting ridiculous and kind of does this one to like walk away, turn and walk away move. That had me laughing. Of course, the highlight for me of this episode was the K-Sean.
The run.
Oh my God, the run. When he started doing the yeah. I couldn't, that was it for me. He actually stole this episode, both with the charade scene and the running. Those two were both. So I think they need to give this the Cation guys some more to do, because he's killing it.
Totally. Last name Prince, by the way, everybody knows. So that's a Detroit Pistons reference, everybody.
K-Sean Prince.
Yeah, that's 2 episodes in a row that K-Sean has really had some good moments. I think it was just the last episode. It was either that one or the one right before, where he and Ransom had that really good moment where Ransom did a Tamarian quote, and he's like, "Hey, thanks, man. You've been listening." That's so cool.
He's like, "I pay attention." Yeah, that was another funny moment. So they're using the characters great. This one was a chance for T'Lyn to get some more shine. I still want to see. I still want to see a little bit more from Freeman, because I want to see a little bit more character development on Freeman's character. Because I think they can explore a lot there still, even though they've touched upon it here and there, but. As a lead on the show, and I think that she's capable of getting whatever you can handle, handling whatever you give her. So I would like to see her utilized more in the comedy.
A little bit more of Admiral Freeman and that dynamic. There should be a little bit more in there. I'm sure they must have more in store for us, I'm assuming, but that would be good because they introduced that kind of early on. I think it was at the end of the first season, and then maybe one other time. But yeah, I'd like to see more of that.
Yeah. And I like, because the back and forth between, them is actually good, and seeing some more personality from their captain would be great too, as well, as opposed to just being a complimentary character all the time. There was also another moment there. I just comedy wise, it just tells me these guys understand it. The Betazoids are in the room. They come to the bridge of the ship. They're trying to take over. And the people on the bridge try to fight back, and there's 2 ensigns there, a black guy and a woman, and the Betazoid says, "I sense that you are attracted to each other."
Yep.
And that moment where he's like, well, I mean, he starts to get the nervous, like, like I've been wanting to say something about it, but since you've sensed it, I mean, I have to address it now. And it was one of those moments. And then the woman, she says, I mean, I wouldn't be averse to it.
Yeah.
And so watching them have that uncomfortable, awkward relationship kind of working together slash, feelings for each other relationship moment was funny to me in this play out of that storyline.
Realized now that you say that, wouldn't that just be great as an icebreaker? If you're trying to, you don't even know if this person's likes you. You think they do. You kind of, it seems like maybe they do. Maybe they're playing hard to get. Maybe they're too prideful. Who knows what's going on? But then somebody comes along and just says, "Oh, you guys like each other." Like, oh, thank you, thank you, thank you. Yes. You just made it so much easier for me. These last 3 months have been hell.
I've been trying to communicate that for this.
Yeah, and then of course the other person's like, "Don't blow my cover, man." But still, I think that would be awesome. Oh,
it definitely saves a lot of awkward moments because they finally got to it. Like when she's like, "I wouldn't be averse to it." They were actually starting their relationship right in that moment, and so I thought that was funny because that's kind of indicative of things being unsaid and people working together, and there's like all of this tension or this whatever unspoken feelings between people. And I thought it was hilarious for the Betazoid to kind of like use that as a weapon, like to use calling that out as a way to disarm, the people that are about to attack you. So I thought that was clever as well. Love the line that Tawny gave when she's like, 62? You look great, by the way.
Yeah.
And
then right back into what she was saying.
Right back at, yeah.
There was a great line at the end that I really liked as well from the Romulan captain, of the Romulan warbird. And when the Cerritos is just about to cross the neutral zone, the warbird's ready, and then they turn around and they're all like, "Ah," they're bummed out. But then the captain says, "Set a course for Sector 87. We'll lurk over there."
Yeah.
Perfect. Yes, Romulans like to lurk. They just kind of decloak out of nowhere, and they're like, "We see you, Picard," or whatever. So I thought that was very smartly written. That was brilliant.
Yeah. And I think prior to that, he also said, "What? They can't cross the line every time," or something like that. Had me rolling as well.
That's so good. But the way you said earlier that they kind of troll Star Trek, they do kind of troll Star Trek in some way. They're kind of laughing at Star Trek with love. That's the key. Yes. Is it's coming from a position of fandom, and we sure laugh at Star Trek a lot as fans.
Yeah. I thought that Rutherford had some kind of Section 31 plan for Boimler when he was like, "I'm going to tell him about the program." And he kind of emphasized that. I thought it was going to be something to that degree, but it wasn't. And also, where I had one other point to make.
You wanted to talk about that elephant bone that was stuffed into Ransom's bung.
Oh,
you rewound that 10 times.
Yeah,
or maybe that was me.
Forget about that, but I drew a picture of it, and I'd like everybody to see.
There it is.
No.
I'm gonna take that picture and hide it under my mattress.
Yeah.
There was a line, one more line. That we're almost out of time here, but one more line I have to point out was T'Lyn. When somebody said something to the effect of, "Why is everybody so weird and yelling?" And T'Lyn said, "This crew is always weird and yelling." Another great one. Beautifully delivered, of course.
Yes. And every time Shaq says "baby bear," easy baby bear, it's like I want him to call me baby bear one time.
Aww. He's thinking
it. When we get him on the show, maybe I can induce a baby bear on him.
That'd be nice. Or we could call him Baby Bear. That'd be weird. He'd be like, "Only I can call people Baby Bear," or whatever. All right. Well, before we go, we do have to point out a few other people who do go by the name Baby Bear. And their names are Homer Frizzell, Dr. Anne-Marie Segal, Baby Bear Eve England, Yvette Blackmon-Tom, TJ Jackson-Bey out in Missouri, Bill Victor Arucan,
Arucan,
Titus Mohler, Darlena Marie, Dr. Mohamed Noor, Tierney C. Dieckmann, Baby Bear on a Post, Anil O. Polat, Joe Balsarotti, Mike Gu, Dequeue, Justine Norton-Kertson, Dr. Stephanie Baker, Baby Bear, Care Bear, Carrie Schwent, Faith Howell, Edward Foltz, My Live from Tokyo, The Matt Boardman, Chris McGee, Justin Weir, Baby Bear, Jake Barrett, Jake Baby Barrett, Jane Jorgensen, Henry Unger, Allyson Leach-Heid, Julie Manosfee, Marcia Classic Schreier, Greg K. Wickstrom, and of course, Dr. Susan V. Gruner and Jason the Outrageous Okun. This has been a fun one. Special thanks to Meg Lloyd, giving us a lot of insights. She's tons of fun. Can't wait to have her back. That's for damn sure. That's about it, though, right?
Yeah. Also, shout out to Jamie Loftus. Whoever you are, Jamie, we got to meet each other and exchange notes about last names. But I definitely love this episode. I
think we all know that that's actually your secret pen name. We're watching you, Jamie Lofton. Everybody, please make sure you like this video. Please make sure you are subscribed to the channel. If you're listening in, give us a 5-star rating and a nice review if you would. If you want to be notified every time we release a new episode on YouTube, just click that bell icon for notifications. And lastly, don't forget to support us on Patreon. That's patreon.com/the7th-rule for as little as $1 per month. Can you believe it? That's like 3 pennies a day practically. Or just search for the 7th Rule on Patreon. We appreciate all of you. Thanks so much for hanging out. In the comments below, keep the conversation going. What was your favorite Easter egg reference or moment in this episode? Thanks very much for joining us. We look forward to reading those comments, and we'll see you next time. Until then, always remember the 7th Rule.